After disappointment on disappointment and loss after loss, the Detroit Lions, after 32 years, have finally won a playoff game. In fact, it was only their second playoff win since 1957, with most current Lions fans being lucky to have even experienced one win in their lifetime. And this game couldn't have possibly been any more storybook. The Lions and Rams matched up in the wild card round to see who would go on to match up with the winner of the Eagles and Bucks on Monday Night Football. After Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers absolutely demolished the 2 seed Cowboys earlier in the day, and the seeding had already been set up for the divisional round. But this game ended up being everything we hoped for and then some. The Rams and Lions were a great matchup on paper to begin with, as the Rams were the hottest team in the NFL, going 7-1 in their last 8 games, only losing to the best team in the NFL in the Baltimore Ravens, where they lost an overtime game to a crazy 76-yard punt return that finally ended the overtime deadlock between these Titans. The Rams had been on fire for months. Coming into the playoffs, Puka Nacua, along with Cooper Kupp and Kyron Williams, led the Rams offense to the 6th seed, being quarterbacked by none other than Matthew Stafford. Stafford is one of the reasons this game happened to be as interesting as it was, as Matt Stafford spent many seasons in a Detroit Lions jersey, and he was the result of one of the Lions' worst moments in this playoff win drought. And in all honesty, probably one of the worst seasons in sports history. The Detroit Lions famously went 0-16 in the 2008 NFL season, with a team that, ironically enough, featured current Lions head coach Dan Campbell. And with the first pick in that draft, they selected none other than the Rams' current starting quarterback, Matthew Stafford. Stafford's lack of success in Detroit can honestly not be put on him for the most part, as he was quite literally drafted to one of the worst teams in the history of the NFL. The Lions organization had very little talent at the time, and while Calvin Johnson was one of the greatest receivers to ever live, while playing with Stafford, he was forced to retire due to injuries at age 30. The duo made 2 playoff appearances in their time together, but never were able to do anything significant, as the Lions allowed almost 1,000 yards of total offense in those 2 games, as well as a controversial no call versus the Cowboys in 2014. Stafford would make the playoffs again without Calvin Johnson in 2017, but would lose to the Legion of Boom Seahawks the year after Johnson retired, in a game that was within 1 score before the Seahawks pulled away late. After multiple losing seasons, the last in which the Detroit Lions had the 32nd ranked defense and no playoff success in over a decade with the man who was supposed to lead the Detroit Lions franchise to glory, they decided it was time to close the book on the Matthew Stafford story in Detroit and traded him to the Los Angeles Rams for a number of picks and their current starting quarterback in Jared Goff. Goff was a guy who had the almost opposite career path of Matthew Stafford. As for Stafford, talent was never a question. Everyone knew he had the arm strength and the ability to make big plays with his arm, whereas in Los Angeles, the Rams always felt like Jared Goff was a guy who never lived up to his first overall pick potential, and was a product of Sean McVay's system, which led to his numbers being much better than the actual job that Goff was doing at quarterback. After a Super Bowl loss where the Rams put up only 3 points in a playoff loss in 2020 following a season where they had the best defense in the NFL, but a mediocre offense, they decided they wanted to take a risk to try and upgrade at quarterback with Matthew Stafford. For the Rams, this ended up working out great, as the following season, with a roster that had taken another step, as Cooper Kupp had his talent unlocked and had a historic season with Stafford at QB and McVay still calling the plays. After a midseason move to acquire Odell Beckham made the offense take another step forward, the Los Angeles Rams went all the way, winning the Super Bowl, and Matthew Stafford, who was a career loser, finally took the greatest hardware in the game home. And after 3-13-1 season in Detroit, where Goff played good, not great, it seemed like a foregone conclusion that the Rams had won the trade. However, this would be the turning point for the Lions, as they were so bad in 2021 that they were able to draft Aiden Hutchinson with the 2nd pick, and later in the 1st round with a pick from the Los Angeles Rams, added a gambling phenom out of Alabama in speedster Jamison Williams. They also drafted safety Kirby Joseph later in this draft, and the haul from the Rams also ended up resulting in Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Melifonwu, Josh Pascal, and Broderick Martin for Detroit. All of these assets turned out incredibly for the Lions, as this last season they took a massive leap, being a top 5 team in almost every offensive category, with rookies Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs being absolute studs right out of the gate, and Laporta having one of the best rookie tight end seasons of all time. Gibbs also being the lead back over the back half of the season, and I'm certain he could have led the NFL in rushing yards had he gotten the carries he gets now in the beginning of the year. But all of this history culminated in a 3 seed versus a 6 seed matchup where the winner of the NFC North's Detroit Lions would take on the second lowest seed in the NFC, LA Rams. This would be Stafford's long awaited return to Detroit after 11 seasons with the team, through highs and lows, and an eventual departure from the team, which ended up in a Super Bowl ring for LA and a franchise record setting season for the Detroit Lions. But like I mentioned earlier, storylines aside, these teams were pretty evenly matched, as it was sure to be a shootout. With a Rams defense that was not what it once was, and a poor Lions defense, the game was set up to be high scoring. And in the first half, that's certainly what it was. Detroit drove down the field and punched it in with David Montgomery to get the scoring started, but the Rams had to settle for a field goal on their first drive. And after a 59-yard drive down the field, Jahmyr Gibbs broke off a 10-yard touchdown run to go up 3-14 with a game that looked like the Lions could pull away early in. However, after a 50-yard touchdown to Puka Nacua, the Lions answered with a 69-yard drive, capping off with another Sam Laporta touchdown. LA came down the field once again, and another big play was delivered by Stafford, this time to Tutu Atwell, to make the score 21-17 going into the half. After some halftime adjustments from both teams, the first half fireworks ceased, and the third quarter only had 2 scores, with the Lions and Rams just trading field goals to have the score at 20-14 heading into the fourth. Brett Maher would kick a field goal to put the Rams in position to take the lead on their next drive, but after a long drive got stalled out, they decided to punt the ball back down to Detroit on 4th down instead of attempting a 66-yard field goal. In my opinion, this would end up being a mistake, as 66 yards is very far, but the Rams never got the ball back, and the Lions would go on to drain the clock and finally break the longest playoff win drought in NFL history. Almost poetically, Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff were able to do things that their predecessor at quarterback never was able to do for their respective organizations. Stafford ended up being the guy who took the Rams over the hump and made them extra scary come playoff time. The season, while ending in a wild card loss for the Rams, was somewhat of a success as well, as after a 3-6 start, they rallied and made a run, heading into next year with some newfound hope. Both quarterbacks also played great in this game, with Stafford throwing for 367 yards and 2 touchdowns, 181 of them going to Puka Nacua, who broke another rookie record in the single game receiving yards mark for a rookie, and Jared Goff with his 277 yards, only throwing 5 incompletions and 1 touchdown, taking down the Rams, who gave up on him, at one time thinking he would never be good enough and live up to his potential, won his very first playoff game for an organization who had not won in the postseason in over 3 decades. And while LA might not have wanted you, in the words of Dan Campbell,
hey, I'll just say it like this, all right? Hey, you're good enough for Detroit, Jay.
That's all I got for this one though, folks. I honestly am excited to see the rest of this postseason for the Lions, and while I think they can beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I still do have the 49ers making out of the NFC. Hopefully they prove me wrong though, but if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe, as well as letting me know if you think the Detroit Lions can win it all this year, as well as where you would rank Jared Goff amongst the remaining quarterbacks in the playoffs. I'll see you guys next week though. Ellie out.